Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to the session on empowering MSMEs for a green transition at Connect Karo 2025. We're delighted to host you for what promises to be an enriching conversation on the role of micro, small, and medium enterprises in shaping India's green future. To begin with, I invite Ms. Steffi Olicle, Program Communications Manager, Climate Economics and Finance Program at WRI India, to deliver the opening remarks.
Thanks, Nivelta. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. When one hears of India's economic growth story, one imagines giant factories, high-tech hubs, and global supply chains. But this growth is powered by the micro, small, and medium enterprises. From dyeing and printing units in Surat to automotive component manufacturing units in Coimbatore, they constitute nearly a third of our GDP, almost half of our exports, and sustain more than 110 million livelihoods. And yet, this sector is at a crossroad. Climate risks, whether it's indoor heat stress in the shop floor affecting worker health and productivity, or floods disrupting supply chains, these are not distant threats. Global markets are tightening standards on sustainability, and MSMEs at home are struggling with energy costs, access to finance, and fragmented policy support. So how do we ensure that India's MSMEs are not left behind, but instead lead the charge in our green transition? Well, that's the question we're here to explore. During the first part of this session, we have Dr. Vandana Vasudevan talk about her book OTP Please, Online Buyers, Sellers and Gig Workers in South Asia, which shines light on the everyday struggles of MSMEs in South Asia, from navigating e-commerce platforms to handling razor-thin margins and unpredictable markets. It explores the aspirations, struggles, and ingenuity of entrepreneurs navigating new technologies, platforms, and markets. These stories, which are divided into chapters based on emotions, remind us about the vulnerabilities and the resilience of our vast workforce, and that behind every statistic are actually real people facing real challenges. Their stories must inform any policy or financial solutions designed to support them and must not leave anyone behind. This discussion will then set the stage for a broader conversation during the panel discussion featuring distinguished voices from government, industry, and civil society. Together, they will explore how policy frameworks can harmonize regulations, how financial solutions can be more accessible, and how collaborations across private partnership, philanthropic partnerships can unlock innovation and resilience for MSMEs. By bringing these together, the lived experiences of MSMEs and their workers, and the systemic solutions at the policy and finance level, we hope to spark a rich conversation on what it truly means to empower MSMEs and their workers for a resilient, inclusive, and sustainable future. With that, I thank you all for your time, and I warmly welcome you to this session. Thank you.
To set the tone for today's program, we will begin with a welcome and a special book discussion. First, let me introduce Ms. Ulka Kelkar, Executive Director, Climate WRI India. She is an economist with over 25 years of experience in climate change research, outreach, and capacity building. Joining her is Dr. Vandana Vasudevan, author of OTP Please and visiting fellow at the Center for Social and Economic Progress. She holds a PhD in urban development and after 2 decades in the corporate sector, has worked extensively as a development professional and writer. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Kelkar and Dr. Vasudevan.
Thank you so much, Nivedita, and thanks to our audience. Vandana is a former colleague, and I must say that her WRI blog, What Do MSMEs Want, is an example of a blog that I always tell my colleagues to read. It's a perfect example of simple and succinct writing, and if I remember correctly, Vandana, this was fieldwork that you actually did during the throes of COVID. So it just proves that there is no barrier to good research. So I think it'll be really nice if all of you go and have a look at that blog after this session. In her new book, OTP Please, she has spoken to more than 150 informal workers from 5 countries, young and old, male and female, I think in India, all the way from Ladakh to Kanyakumari to Goa, I mean, any place and name it, and she's spoken to people there, and humane conversations. She's also, I think, drawn on a survey of more than 5,000 workers from across 30 cities. So it's really very in-depth research, but it is not structured by industry or market segment. It's structured by human emotions, pleasure, guilt, anxiety, anger, and freedom. All of the emotions that we go through when we order food, our favorite food late at night, or when our anticipated delivery is delayed, or when we are taking an Uber late at night. So I think it's a really a wonderful book, and I think it's available widely. Vandana, I wanted to really talk to you about your understanding of informal workers and small businesses. And particularly to start with, I wanted to talk about the weather, because today and yesterday, everybody is talking about how our speakers are getting delayed, flights are getting delayed, traffic is a mess. But we are the ones who live lives of privilege and luxury. We have the privilege of working from home, of ordering things online. What have you seen about workers who don't have this luxury, and what more can we do to support them? If you could just tell us a little bit about the link between emerging trends on climate and the lives of informal workers.
Right. So, thank you for having me here, Ulka. I must tell you that I've flown down from Kochi like it was like a Mission Impossible thing. I landed at 12:30 and then I rushed to the hotel and got ready and came here. So Ulka was insistent that I join this session, and I'm so glad she was. So happy to be here. And I live in Hyderabad, by the way, but Kochi, there was a conference which was pretty relevant to this. It's called Skill Kerala. And the Kerala government has had done this 2-day wonderful global summit talking about skills, and part of that we will speak about later in the panel. So about climate risk, there's a lot I have written in the book about gig workers and delivery workers who are on the road about 10-12 hours of the day, because that's the amount of work they need to do to make the income that they need. And you know how Delhi is, especially in winter. So despite high pollution and scorching heat, they are always out there. And platforms have done a few things like, set up some rest spaces and other things. But there are tougher things that one can do. For example, do we really need food to be delivered to us between 12 to 4 when the temperature is 48 degrees, right? This needs a huge rethink on behalf of customers and on behalf of platforms, right? There are last summer, I think there was a there was a food delivery worker who was, I think, walking a couple of kilometers in the heat of Bombay, and the customers said that, just forget it, go back. And it raised a lot of questions about what is our role in this. Do we can the government mandate that between 12 to 4, when the temperature is, say, beyond 48 degrees, there should be no food delivery? Because if you think about it, food delivery is not an emergency thing, right? We can schedule our delivery such that the guy doesn't have to walk so much. So it needs a lot of societal change. When we think of climate change and how it, of course, there's a lot of evidence saying that it impacts the poor more than the rich. But there's systemic change, there's societal change, there's a lot of things that need to be reflected upon if we are to, see the other aspect of commerce. That's one thing. That's about gig workers. Let me share with you another research that I'm in the process of completing, and that is about workers in the automotive industry. And this research is about how tech affects, automotive factories. So here, in the context of that, I went to one auto factory in Manesar, and this is like a 2,000, 3,000 crore company. So it's a fully automated factory. There's an assembly line, and there are robots everywhere. And the main process here is forging, which basically is heating the metal to a particular shape. And previously workers were doing it, but now that the factory is automated, it is a robot which picks up that red hot metal which comes out and keeps it aside. Previously, people were doing that. Despite that, there are a lot of human supervisors around because apparently robots can make mistakes, and there are many reasons why they need human supervision also there. So there are a bunch of workers there, and it was August. We had to wear all that helmet and stuff because for safety reasons, and it was scorching. And we were the team of researchers were wondering what happens in April when it nearly touches 50 degrees. And this is an automated factory where there are few workers and a lot of robots. Now, a lot of MSMEs in the auto sector are doing welding and forging and stuff like that. There are no robots to help them. And you can imagine the state of the workers. There is no ventilation because it's not because they deliberately are avoiding it, because the nature of the process is such that they cannot have ACs and coolers over there. So they are forced to have, it is a hot environment. So there's research which says that, climate heat stress due to climate change will reduce global GDP by 2%. And there's another ICRIER study which says that for every 1 degree increase in temperature, there's a loss of 2.8% of productivity by laborers. So climate change, heat stress is definitely here to stay. And but there are, and therefore certain other companies in the West and Japan have thought about this, and there are steps that they're taking. For example, in a really hot environment, they're putting certain kinds of fans, which HSLV fans they're called, which can suck out the heat from the ceiling. Then here's where tech can help. There's AI sensors which say that, okay, it's become too hot now, workers need a break. Then there are these helmets which workers can wear, which are, liquid cooling and air cooling helmets. There's a little knapsack behind with water and tubes go into the helmet to keep the person cool. These are things that countries in that West is doing, that Japan is doing in automotive factories, but we need to do. These have to be sort of mandated. There should be inspection by regulators to see what kind of environment workers are in and how climate stress is affecting them and what are employers doing about it.
Thank you so much. We have a session actually tomorrow as well on MSMEs facing heat and flood risks in Surat. So some of these examples that you're giving are really very important. And sometimes the solutions may be there, but for some reason the financing is not there. Because while a bank may give a loan to an MSME for another intervention that improves productivity, the worker productivity is somehow not always taken into account. So thanks so much for sharing these examples. And we look forward to continuing the discussion on finance when we are joined by our other expert panelists for today's session. Vandana, I wanted to ask you about, in your book, you talk about really this information asymmetry that exists in the platform economy, the new digital economy. And how this asymmetry in information translates into really an asymmetry in power. It's, a few big players who are calling all the shots, and the small businesses are really, not able to compete. I think you give the example of an automotive component manufacturer, I think a motorcycle manufacturer who is really, faces so many hurdles. And then moves out. Can you tell us a little bit about how the small business can be supported in this modern economy, this digital globalized economy? And I fear that the transition to green fuels and green technologies will bring one more element of inequality.
Versus
yeah.
So, Ulka, unfortunately, from deep research that I have done, the digital economy is skewed towards the big player. So when you are looking for an taxi on Uber, there are fleet owners. So chances are that one of the cars of the fleet owner will pop up as your option, rather than that lone car owner who would be around the place. Similarly, in restaurants, it's the big restaurants who can afford to pay and be there on top of the listings on a food delivery app. in Amazon would rather work, for example, with a big player who can share the discount rather than with a give a big discount to a small player. So so the whole thing is sort of skewed towards the big businesses, the entire digital economy. So small players are jumping onto the platform, in FOMO, literally, because they both restaurants and businesses, because they feel that if I'm not going to be on Amazon, my competitor is going to take away all the business and I'm going to be left behind. But there are various things which actually counter this assumption. For high commission fees, okay, then rules by players like Amazon and Flipkart, which require a certain amount of inventory to be kept, which the return policy is completely decided by them. So in the example that Ulka shared, this Bangalore-based motorcycle parts manufacturer, so barrel exhaust, she makes barrel exhausts, and those parts can't be used more than once. So if you use it once, there's a thin carbon film which sits on it. So it's no longer new. And such a product should not ever be returned. But people in all kinds of customers, fraud customers, used to order them, use them, return them. And he often told Amazon that, listen, this should be classified as not returnable, but nobody was listening to him. And anyway, the other thing is that there is nobody to listen to. So it's either a bot or it's an email. So you can't really negotiate with anyone there. So he got so fed up of it that he decided, I'm only going to sell from my own website. And so there are, the return policy is not yours. There are all kinds of levies which are put, which sellers don't understand. I believe there are bigger players on Amazon. They hire accountants to understand what are the levies, and that's a separate job in itself. So it's really a maze out there, which the small seller has sort of jumped into be on par. And, even if you see, for example, restaurants. Actually, if you think about it, if there is a restaurant in, say, Khan Market, nobody from, Dwarka is going to order from there, unlikely. Because by the time that food comes there, it's going to be soggy and whatever. So it's actually that catchment area, which is the business of that restaurant. But because there is this illusory feeling that, I'm getting reach to all over the place, they list themselves on it. And then they grapple with commissions, with rules, with the algorithmic management of the app, which is beyond their understanding because they're not that digitally savvy. So all these are, the dice is loaded against the small player in the digital economy.
Thanks so much, Vandana. And we have with us to join our panel, 3 experts who actually are trying to tackle different aspects of empowering MSMEs, how workers can, be supported, how they can be skilled, how access to finance can be improved, and so on. So we will come to the other expert panelists. But in the meantime, let me just quickly check, are there any burning questions from the audience for Vandana? If there's any 1 or 2 questions, we'd be happy to take them. We can we would be very happy to take some questions at a later stage as well. So please do note them down and we'll be happy to come back to Vandana. I'll now hand over back to my colleague Nivedita to move to the next part of this session. We'll request Vandana to stay on and continue this conversation. Nivedita.
Ulka, before we move ahead, can we have a picture with the book with the 2 of you? If that's okay. We now move ahead to the panel discussion on empowering MSMEs for a green transition. Allow me to introduce our distinguished panelists, Mr. Dheeraj Nayyar, Chief Economist, Vedanta. He is an economist and policy expert with wide experience across government, academia, and industry. Dr. Abhishek, Manager, National Skill Development Corporation, where he contributes to advancing India's skilling ecosystem. Mr. Vercherian VSV, Tamil Nadu State President of Lagu Udyog Bharati, representing the voices and interests of small industries at the state level, and Dr. Vandana Vasudevan, author and visiting fellow, Center for Social and Economic Progress, whose work spans across urban development, corporate leadership, and journalism. The discussion will be moderated by Ms. Ulka Kelkar.
Thank you, Nivedita. Please. Really a big thanks to all our guests and esteemed speakers. We'll really dive right into it. And Dheeraj, I wanted to start with you. The big news and the concern that everybody has is the tariffs, how they're affecting Indian industry and particularly MSMEs. And you have a deep understanding not just of the trade situation, but also additional factors like CBAM. So could you just give us your expert advice? Should we be very worried, or are there any rays of hope for the near future?
Well, I mean, I like to break this impact of tariffs at a macro level and micro level. Now, at a macro level, obviously, there will be some effect on the GDP growth, which will not be substantial. It will be, so instead of 6.5 or 7, we'll grow at 6 to 6.5, so 0.5%, which can be absorbed. But at a micro level, again, there are certain industries which have a large market in the US, whether it's textiles or apparel, seafood, some amount of, other gems and jewelry. A lot of labor-intensive sectors in particular have a very large market in the US. So at a micro level, the impact on jobs there and the prospects there are likely to be obviously much more serious. But I think, the world is large, so there are other markets to explore. Also with the US in particular, situation is always dynamic. So it's not like it's the end of the road here. Things are dynamic and, things may change. And the government has said that they, to the extent possible, they will support the sectors which are, going to suffer as a result. But I think, a more general point is that, there can be a crisis not of our own making in any way, whether it's MSME or India or large industry. This is something which is happening, completely exogenous to India. It's not something of our making. And we have to be ready for that because, whether you talk about the US tariffs now or a climate emergency later or a pandemic, we've already seen the pandemic happen. We've seen several shocks happen over the last 10 or 15 years to the economy and to MSMEs. And I think ultimately the challenge is for industry to be resilient. And I think on the MSME side, the one, concern I have when I see the data is that this MSME, a big chunk is in the first M, which is micro, right? And not so many in medium. And, when we talk about medium scale industries or small and medium industries at a global level, we think about Germany or, other countries where the middle is very strong. So they're not necessarily large companies, but they are, by Indian standards, they would be large. But, that medium is much more important. And I think where you're micro, then you have a much more serious challenge of being resilient to any shock. So I think that in India, one of the things we've done over decades, both in terms of policy and narrative, is romanticize the small. And, policies have also favored this remaining small rather than going big. But I think everyone's ambition, so micro should definitely look to become small, small should look to become medium, medium should look to become large. So I think that ambition needs to be there, policy needs to be oriented towards that, narrative needs to be oriented towards that. We need to get bigger. I mean, what's the difference between micro and a startup? I mean, eventually even a startup starts at 5 people as a micro enterprise would, right? But when we talk about startups, immediately in our mind, we think of unicorn, reach $1 billion valuation in rapid time, get investment. So what's stopping, anyone who starts a business? Not that everyone is going to be a $1 billion business, but have that ambition to, grow in size, because that gives you the resilience in a world which is going to be uncertain, which is going to be tumultuous, where there will be shocks which you cannot control, and you have to, deal with it as such. So I think, when we talk about MSMEs, let's also try. I mean, we like to. It's kind of, they're not a homogeneous group, because micro is very different from medium. So I think the more you're integrated, the larger you are, the more you're integrated in national supply chains, the more you're integrated in regional supply chains, the more you're integrated with global supply chains. That's when, you have many more support systems to deal with something like Trump tariffs, right? So, I mean, the government, you can always go to the government for support, and government is a supporter of last resort to the economy, but of the last resort. So I think, to the extent possible, all of us, whether we are large, medium, small, or micro, have to make sure that, we can weather certain storms, the best way possible on our own as well.
Thanks, Neeraj. And we'll come back to you in the second round to ask a little bit more about some of these financial measures that can actually help to enable the micro to become small, the small to become medium, and so on. But I'll now move to Dr. Vechayan. Sir, Tamil Nadu's clusters are crucial for the exports, automotive, textiles, and so on. Can you tell us a little bit from the MSME side of things about this cluster model, and how specific financial measures are being adopted to support the MSMEs? Thanks.
Yeah, respected dignitaries and fellow industry leaders, good evening, one and all. I am Dr. Chelian from Laghu Udyog Bharati. These are the All India MSME organizations from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. We have around 70,000 members in Laghu Udyog Bharati. We are the only pan-India organization for the micro, small and medium enterprises. See, Madam is asking a good question about the cluster and what is the financial support required to the MSMEs. See, lot of, in Tamil Nadu, around 6 million MSME sectors are there today. Lot of burdens and lot of supports are there. I wanted to highlight some few points about the financial support and the clusters activities. In this cluster, some lot of auto sectors and electronics sectors and textile industries are covering in Tamil Nadu. But in cluster that forming, the government is supporting initially that testing centers like textile centers, some dyeing and exporting activities are done. But so far, still lot of supports required micro level from the government. In the financial sector, still lot of banks are giving paperwork like in that collateral activities like that. They are taking more time to sanction the limit. But today SIDBI is taking online portal, through portal, without any MSME owners not come to the SIDBI office. They are doing in online. And secondly, our central government is giving that lot. Whenever we are paying for GST, customers are paying amount after 60 days or 90 days. Still lot of public sector units are delaying the payment. So government is now, they are taking the GST Sagaya up like this from SIDBI. All the activities are coming through online portal only, but still that lot of banks are still getting loans from lot of paperwork. It should be avoided actually. The lot of MSME owners are working day-to-day functioning today. Still it is working at day-to-day function only, because lot of skill development centers we have to form. From the government side, the engineering colleges or polytechnics, the students can get the appointment from the MSME sectors. At least 1 year they have to take training. The system I have to already we have getting from Laghu Udyog Bharati to the government. It should be honored. After that only the skill issues will be sorted out. Then again, second thing that the tier and the tier 2 and tier 1 suppliers give more infrastructure facility to the suppliers of tier 1. Then only that immediately MSME sectors will go up. Then same thing, then regarding the policy advocacy, MSME to go green level, they are ready to go green channel. But government still that solar solar power, that waste management, the EV adoption, everyone is MSME is ready to do that. But subsidy scheme to be added from the government of India or government of state government. I mean, recommendation government to launch green capex interest subvention scheme. It includes some 5% subsidy to give the MSME sectors, because the green energy we can take it forward. All these activities to be fast tracked, it should be getting from the governments, that automatically MSMEs will go up. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Abhishek, I'll move to you now, because Dr. Vecharian already touched upon the skilling aspect. And, as NSDC expert, I wanted to ask you, what are really the challenges regarding financing for skilling, and how can that be really mobilized? Could you just share your thoughts a little bit? Thank you.
See, before we look for the finance, which is definitely an issue, let's look at the skill in totality. So if you look at the PLFS product level for survey, it talks about the workers. So the formally vocational skilled persons around 4%. But do only 4% of people are employed? No. When we look at the labor force participation, worker participation ratio, they are touching 50%. So when we talk about the skills, so how we think about the skill and how it is actually happening on the ground, there's a big difference. Right? Yeah, there is some difference. So what are the difference? For example, there is a scheme called PM Vishwakarma that came some years ago. There was a scheme of Pradhan Mantri Kausal Vikas Yojana. It is already running right now also. So there's a difference. When we talk about the Vishwakarma, they are the people who are doing something from the tradition. They are doing something and they think that they are skilled. We capture in PLFS when we are talking about the informally skilled. So we have a two type of things, the formally skilled and informally skilled. Now, who is financing those informal skilled people? Nobody is financing them. Because if you look at the government finance, it is about the PMKVY or the ITIs that is being done. So, but they are also doing something, and that is a big group. I will say the bigger group, because they are 4% formally skilled, and they are. So, when we are bringing this issue of finance and the green transition, then what actually we are speaking, that if you are going for a green transition, you will have to change something. So what you have to change? Either you have to change your raw materials to go green, or you change your process, or you change your product. Now, I like listening to the speakers for me, and they were talking about, when we talk about the industry, whether it is MSME or the big firm, that their basic thing is competitiveness. They want to be more competitive because they have to survive, competitive and profit. So when we're talking about the green transition something, they look that whether green transition will help me or not. And then they are going to think that what different aspects they have to do. So in the green transition, they will change the technology, product, process, whatever. Then only they will need new skills. If they are not changing anything, they will not need any skill. And the need of change arises. In ideal world, we can say the need of change should come from the board's own idea that we have to go green. But actually, it is about the consumers. So who is facing the consumer? For example, you were talking about the CBAM. So there are different type of MSMEs. If we categorize MSME from the perspective of the how they are facing the consumer. So there are smaller units who are producing for the local market, directly facing the consumer. Here, consumer is price sensitive. They are not thinking about the green or non-green. They are looking at the price. So here, they don't have any pressure from the consumer to go green. And then come second, who are producing for the local market, whose consumer are sensitive about the green, means if they say that we are green, they may have a better sale. But again, price must not increase. And then third type of MSME that I was talking about, the a smaller unit, who are producing, whose customer are going to pay certain price for if they go green. Second type of MSMEs are those who are producing for the bigger firm. So here, the idea about the green transition, technology adoption, skilling all come from the idea that what that firm for whom they are producing things, what the grease. And they are third who are producing for the export. The firms who are exporting for producing for the export, they may be exporting in those countries where the environment law are not strict. Some may be exporting in those countries where the laws like CBAM are coming. So when we're talking about this financing products, that is largely a question of a supply side, that what products are there and how accessible are they. We should also look at what are demand. Now, if you divide these MSMEs in these groups, then you will find that certain MSMEs have a big demand for the financing. For example, those MSMEs who are exporting to the European market, now they know that CBAM is coming and they have to do a different thing or some new environmental regulation can come tomorrow because here the government is involved. So they will say that we need green finance for technology adoption and also for the scale. For the rest of the firms, it is not that big issue. So what I say that while we think about this green financing, we need to prioritize that what products have to be developed, green finance product to be developed, and where we have to increase the awareness. So this is the very first thing that I will talk. I wanted to speak about the financing.
We can come back to a second round. Vandana, I wanted to come back to you really. You heard a lot of different perspectives now, from very different vantage points. I was wondering if there was anything you wanted to reflect on that resonated with you.
So I just had a thought with after Dheeraj spoke. So you spoke about how we MSMEs need to think big, and and then we reach a stage where it doesn't matter what tariff threats there are. We, as an economy, we will be much stronger, which it resonated with me. I completely agree. However, it also got me thinking about the fact that it's not that MSMEs lack ambition. They are ambitious, but they are done in by so many constraints that they have that they are not able to make their, grow, or, who doesn't want to grow? The firms who are micro definitely want to become medium. For example, the constraint that they have, since we are speaking of finance, there are, suppose somebody launches a new product and that he goes for a loan, but the bank wants the entire 5-year plan of the ROI, like what's going to happen, what's the roadmap for the next 5 years, which that guy himself doesn't know, because apart from the fact that he may be less educated and all that, because if it's a new product, he doesn't have that entire vision. Then there are women who ask for when they approach banks for loans, they are asked for collateral, but most assets are not in women's name. Like land or whatever else are typically not in the woman's name. So that's another constraint. Then skills. When we talk about skills, I just came from that skill conference, like I told you. There are two kinds of issues with skills. One is skill shortage, where you don't have people who possess that particular skill. The second is a skill gap, where people are skilled or they claim to be skilled in that particular thing, but the employer finds that what they know is totally useless, and he has to retrain them completely. And in the automotive industry, people have told me that happens a lot with ITI people, which brings us to a completely different area of improvement that's required, which is ITI syllabus and how that is not aligned with what industry needs. So skilling is one thing, finance is the other, lack of land. For example, once a Haryana MSME person said that, land parcels are auctioned and whoever is the highest bidder gets that. But actually, they may not be ready with their factory plan. And the guy who is ready doesn't manage to get the land parcel. So all of these are huge concerns. Of course, digital literacy, marketing, all that. So, I mean, MSMEs are not lacking in ambition, but they're lacking in many other things, support systems and institutional things.
Dheeraj, I noticed you've picked up your mic. So would you want to just...
I was going to say, I mean, so the other side is the when you talk about financing again, beyond green financing, I think in general, our financial system has been far too conservative, and it's really not reformed very much. I mean, the lesson we drew from the 2008 global financial crisis was that too much innovation is a bad thing. But just because the West went to, or Wall Street went to one extreme, doesn't mean that we believe that the ship is in harbor, it's fine, but ship is meant to sail out in sea to test its seaworthiness. So I think again, my own view is that asking MSMEs, constantly asking for government support, intervention, that's not a route to growth or sustained growth over the. You need a financial system, and I agree there with Vandana. You need a financial system that is innovative, responsive, risk taking. I think in India we still have a huge problem, with risk taking. It's very comfortable to lend to established, enterprises, large enterprises. But large enterprises, frankly, don't even rely on the Indian banking system because they can tap capital from anywhere in the world, right? So, so I think again, I mean, I think the financial system needs a rethink, and on the loan side, you need much more competition in banking. We've literally had maybe one new bank in the last 20 years. The banking is still over-regulated, very, very too conservative in my view, and not like built for growth, for risk-taking, especially when you're an unknown entity or your MSME. How are you supposed to give 10-year plans or 5-year plans? I mean, it's ridiculous, right? I mean, that's why if you talk about startups, they all go to venture capital and private. They don't go to banks. Right, but again, there are not that many MSMEs which would have access to that particular set of investors. So I think, when we're talking about financing overall, or even green financing, I think first we need to rethink the way our financial system is structured. We need to be much more innovative. There have to be pooling solutions, securitization. There's a lot of stuff, words which if you talk about, people will be like, oh God, you're going the Wall Street way, or but you have to be innovative in today's world, and you have to support your younger enterprises, so to speak, the smaller ones, right? So I think government funding and government subsidy is fine, but it's not going to, deliver you the results. And secondly, so there's the loan side, then there's the bond side, right? A lot of countries in the world have quite a robust green bond market now. Again, in India, the bond market itself is not so deep or robust. It's again dominated by large companies. We've had a few green bond issues, again by large companies, from which it's already been shown that you can raise finance at a cheaper cost than a regular bond if it's a green bond and sustainability linked bond. So I think again we need to deepen it. We need to have more robust bond markets. Of course, the large companies have to lead and set the benchmarks. But then the MSMEs also have to be able to tap not just loans. They have to be able to tap not only bank loans, but the bond side. They need to be brought into the fold in terms of this new forms of financing, whether it's private equity, venture capital. Because ultimately, if you have to grow, you need capital. And if you have to grow, you have to take risk. So there's no such thing as a risk-free system. If you want a risk-free system, you can have a status quo system where things will continue as they are, right? But somebody's got to take a risk. Now, either the government through development banks takes that risk, which I don't see happening because the government, again, recovering from its NPA crisis and so on. And there will be failures. Let's also be ready to accept that not every failure is a scam. Some MSMEs will try something ambitious, maybe with green technologies, may not work out. That's the way it is. That's par for the course in a system like that. So I think just again, a rethink on the way we do finance, on the need for innovation there, the need to extend it beyond the safety zone. I think that's one part of it. And second part, I think, is that again, if you're talking about, I think, and Abhishek made some points around that ultimately, if you go to an MSME and say that you make this green transition, but they have to change everything, well, who's going to bear the cost? Right. It's not fair, again, on frankly, any enterprise, unless an international agency or government comes and says, we will pay you and you change everything and, we will also reskill your work. So it has to have a commercial logic, the transition. And remember, it's a transition. The word is energy, the term is energy transition. So again, I think a little more strategic thinking of how we want to do this over our net zero target is first 2070. Maybe that's too far away. None of us can think, that far. But, over a 5-10 year period, how we intend to transition in which sectors, at what cost, what is becoming commercially viable, what is likely to need government support. I think these are things, again, we need to think about, because just blanket saying MSMEs need to do a green transition is not fair on them, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Vandana, I wonder if I might come back to you, because this reminded me of this example that you gave in your blog about how during COVID, a lot of textile MSMEs were able to very nimbly pivot to manufacturing PPE, protective equipment, garments. It gives us a lot of hope when we hear about that. Even in the automotive industry, we hear about MSMEs that are, foundries that are able to pivot. They start manufacturing for other applications, look at other export markets. Can you tell us a little bit more about why this doesn't happen more often? What are the limitations to this?
In COVID, it happened, the government supported all the MSMEs to make, can you hear? It's okay. To make the PPE kits, because the government wanted their help. So they supported them and made things easy. But in normal life, in a non-crisis situation, it's the MSME which is getting bogged down by red tape and too much of regulation. This one young MSME guy told me that by the time he gets all the clearances and NOCs and everything, he said, "Madam, josh hi chala jata hai. I wanted to start something new." And then, so it's not easy. We've already spoken about finance and skill, and regulation is the other big hurdle. However, this is a personal opinion, but I have this to say. I think that, we are, the governments and other institutions are too obsessed with tech-based startups. It's Startup India corners all the resources, all the attentions. But there are a host of lots of small enterprises which don't have a tech component and which need help. But for example, in the FMCG segment, every other month there is a launch of a new of a niche health juice, or a snack person where somebody has started a regional snack. For example, there is a manufacturer of Thekwa, that Bihar biscuit in Hyderabad. Sometimes I see it in the supermarket near my house, and sometimes I don't. Then again it appears. And it makes me think that, okay, this guy must be having, production, distribution hiccups, because of which it comes and goes like that. And there are lots of these kind of budding new people who don't have a tech component, who are manufacturers. And they don't get that, they don't have access to the big VC networks, and, they don't know how to pitch properly and stuff. They're typically, so there's this huge inequality. People who can do all that stuff are people like us, all urban and savvy and all. And people who start all these things, and it's very brave of them to jump in where the multinationals are and fight for retail space with Unilever and Pepsi and stuff. Those kind of people need our support, and you don't need that digital component for the government to support it now. But I think a lot of the dazzle is about tech-based, new ventures.
Thank you. Dr. Abhishek, I'll just turn to you, because both Vandana and Dheeraj spoke about supporting, in different ways. How is NSTC, are there any examples of how you're working with employers or with the global buyers to incentivize the skilling of the MSME workforce?
Okay. See, when we're looking about the MSME workforce skilling, as I divided the MSMEs in different segments. So, again, I am going to that division only. So there are different type of MSMEs. MSMEs who are directly facing, I said, the customer, who are not with the producing for a bigger or global corporate. Then here there are already government schemes to facilitate skill development. For example, if you look at the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, the flagship scheme, so there are components in which the employer can participate and government supports them. Here the big issue is, as said, that the issue is about the, as Nes was also talking, that there are some options available in the market, like the bonds, the cheaper, but the people who are there, they don't understand the importance and they don't, and many times they don't know about that. And here it is, so here we are largely focusing to make them aware about the different supports that are available. And this is the point where we means not only the NSTC, but the think tanks and other NGOs like WRI and also our role comes that we have to tell the people that these are the schemes available of the from the government side that you can use, and they are the supports. Because if you look at we work much on the ground, so we know the ground reality. So we have these schemes, but when you go on the ground and ask the people that how you came to know about this scheme, somebody will say, yes, I listened from the YouTube because this digital, everybody was used to, but you will say that, but after that what you did, they will say, we're not having any idea what to do. So we know about this scheme, but how to register and something, so there are issues. So when we are talking about the finance or any support, there is a need to make the people aware. So NSDC is basically implementing body that is basically the idea I was tacked on. So we are large. So for the smaller micro enterprises, and we largely tell them about the government scheme that are available and how you can take advantage of that. Then there are certain MSMEs that are tied to the bigger firm. Here, it's my personal opinion that the responsibility to sensitize the MSMEs is not only with the government and the bodies related with the government or NGOs. It is also about the big corporates, that they should look whole of their supply chain. That if there's a skill issue, be it skill issue or any issue about the decent work, green, transition, whatever they say, they will have to take responsibility. They will have to say the responsibility. They cannot say that only government responsibility is there, we are not. Because their work, their product is supporting their profit. So here you have their suit. Now the third is those MSMEs who are being excessively and suddenly impacted by the certain actions. You started with the tariffs. Here, government has a big role to play. So here we have to think differently. So first part, after that, all was my personal opinion. So we are doing something, and there are something.
Thank you very much. Dr. Veeracharian, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your recommendations, because I think you have a lot of experience with what works on the ground and what doesn't. And
Yeah. Thank you, madam. Actually, MSME are not looking for subsidies. But for trust, timely finance and simplified process only we are asking. Then with industry association, state clusters and national policy support working together, Tamil Nadu can be the benchmark state for the MSME stakeholders, competitiveness. Let us build confidence in our entrepreneurs, dream bigger, go global and green. Laghu Udyog Bharati already started with MOE with SIDBI. Then GEM portal we have already with that, because all the public sector units today they are getting orders from GEM portal only. Government e-marketing place. No one is taking direct order from government enterprises. All the public sector units coming from GEM. So Laghu Udyog Bharati already we have signed with GEM, and around 50 training programs we have done to all over India for our members. Because of that training only, lot of around 5,000 to 7,000 members, they got GEM certificate, they got GEM registration. They started all the parts through GEM. The same way the SIDBI, we are putting MOU with the SIDBI. Whenever that Laghu Udyog Bharati members comes to SIDBI, within 10 days, the loans should be sanctioned with their requirement. Like that, we are forming. So whatever I already explained that the paperwork, everything now throw away. So through online, they are taking all the resources. The same way that BS certification, actually, when the BS certificates if not available, no one is getting from the material from the imported materials. That also we have discussed with the government. The same way we have taken the training pillar to the National Institution of Quality and Reliability. Training partner, we are giving more training to the MSME sectors for the various aspects, technical, non-technical, health, lot of things we are doing. So Laghu Udyog Bharati is totally, they are taking MSME units for the development of the growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Usually in any session, and particularly a session like this, I sometimes like to think of the same questions, but in the context specifically of women workers or women-led MSMEs. I mean, do we need to do something different, or do we need to do something special? Dr. Abhishek, I wonder if I might turn to you and say, all of the things that you said, if we were to focus them on the female workforce of the country, is there something different, more additional we need to do? And
See, I have. Can work is. Hello. Yeah, it is much better. No. So, see, when people talk about we need to do something different for women, I said yes, we have to do something different, because when we're working with the women on the issues like green transition or any issues which makes our society and our future better, then working with the women is easier. Which means that you have to make less effort, because women are more concerned about the future than men. So, when we are talking about the working with the women, so some issues has already been given. That is issue of the collateral and many things. So they are the systemic issue that we are traditionally facing. So here we will have to do something, that how to make the things easier for them. As Laghu Udyog Bharati is making many MOUs in which you are saying that you said that some paperworks are making easier. So you need to focus more about when we are talking about the women MSMEs and something. See, if you look at the data, there is some increase in the women entrepreneurs.
Correct.
But is it just data or the fact on the ground? What is it? In many cases, because there are government subsidies, so people are registering their MSME on the name of their wife. Is it a fact? Now, if this is happening, then what I said in the starting, that it is easier to work with the women. It is easier to work with the women, and they are more concerned about the future. This advantage gets zero. Because it is only for if it is only for the namesake, then it is not going to work. Now, what you can do, here we cannot do, because see, anybody who is not among them, people distrust. But if bodies like Laghu Udyog Bharati, who are the representative of the MSMEs, if you are coming up and if you are inspiring the people that when you are making your MSME on the name of your women folk to get the subsidy on whatever, you also give them a voice in decision making. If something like that we are going to do, then it will help in a much bigger way. So, I will say that we don't need to do many different things for women. We have to just look at that what are the problems there, and the problem has been created not by them, by us. So just decrease the height of those barriers. They will come and they will make many transitions. I'm not talking about only a green transition. they will make many transition possible by their efforts. Please.
I think again it's a matter of orders, right? So I think the point Vandana made about regulation or deregulation, and again, if you just step away 1 minute, what's common between MSMEs and large and anybody who's doing a venture? They're all entrepreneurs, right? At some level or the other. Whether they're smallest running a 2-person business or running lakhs of people, right? So I think first order problem in India is that there are certain problems all entrepreneurs face in terms of over-regulation, difficult. It's just that larger people have more muscle to either survive it or to get around it. The smaller you are, the higher the cost. But I think there's a first order problems for every entrepreneur. Second, if your size. And then third, I think, if you're gender, like women, I think there are many societal issues as well. Like a lot of CSR, for example, supports, micro enterprises by women. But then again, there are several factors which constrain the growth of those enterprises. But I think we should just keep the problems. They're all so. The fact also I like to say this is that if we are not competitive in the non-green economy, we are not likely to be competitive in a green economy for the same reasons. Because if it's difficult to get land, if it's difficult to get capital, if it's difficult to employ labor, skill or not skill, we'll have the same problem as we do now. We are not globally competitive, especially in manufacturing. We're not competitive. Now we won't be competitive in any transition either unless we get the fundamentals right. So I think sometimes we tend to jump to the specifics without getting the fundamentals right. So you can do your damnedest for the green transition, but if your land laws are a problem, then you'll still have the same competitiveness issue, and the smaller you are, the worse it is. So I think in this debate, let's also not forget that India has to, at some point, and now is a good time, given all the pressure we are under, to get our fundamentals right, policy-wise.
Through Laghuti Pardi, Madam asked some Mahila team. We already formed a Mahila team in Laghuti Pardi. So through Mahila team, we formed some CSR activities are told, some CSR technology we formed. So recently, 3 months before, some 100 technology in 100 days, like that we formed in Laghuti Pardi. Around 65 technologies, our Tamil Nadu team taken that, Mahila team is, Hero team is taken 40 technologies. Recently, they do business with around 2 crores business with through this technology concept. They are taking the technology from the government of India. They are doing business with the through this technology. So recently, Singapore also they went there. They put the exhibition stall. Our team is going very well in this CSR activity. The same way that women employees, North Indians are coming from North India, so with husband and wife, they are joining. Today, men equal, they are working through in CNC, VMC, setting, quality, everything. Today, Tamil Nadu is taking this women entrepreneur. They are supporting us more well advanced, and they are getting salary equal to men employee. These are about the women team activities.
Thank you so much. We are close to the end of the session. I just want to quickly check if there's any question, Vijeta, and sure. Let's take a couple of questions and we'll wrap up. Vijeta, please go ahead. Mic. Can we get your mic, please?
Hello, I'm Vijeta. I'm part of the research team at NSTC. So I actually had 2 questions. One being about, so we see that most of the government schemes that are also seeing a lot of outcomes, and we see them work when there is collateral-free loans, even with PM Vishwakarma, as Abhishek mentioned. And that loan really is used in diverse ways across the country based on the understanding and I think the requirements of those beneficiaries. So I wanted to understand how these collateral-free loans affect the loan market or banks which provide loans with interest, because I wanted to understand how sustainable this is in the long run for the government, and to what extent can it really be grown to.
Do you want to direct your question to any speaker in particular?
I think maybe Dheeraj sir was talking about.
And did you have a second question as well?
Second question was about to do with platform work and women's entrepreneurship that was being spoken of. So we hear a lot about how cloud kitchens have come up, and a lot of women have become entrepreneurs, and platform work has enabled that. But we also hear about how the status of employment is vague in platform work, and there is always this unsure, it's not very sure source of income. But I wanted to understand, and I also see that there's a reduction of bias because there's a digital barrier between the customer and maybe a woman entrepreneur. But is it really helping women entrepreneurs grow? How do we see platforms helping women entrepreneurs?
Vijeta, could you just pass the mic to the gentleman behind you, and then we'll come to the speakers for the responses.
Yeah, so this is Devdeep. So two observations, more other questions. So first is that when it comes to financing, I've been hearing sessions on this MSME financing. So what you have to understand is that the default setting in our entire system is trust. For MSMEs, somehow that trust factor we miss. And that is the reason, and wherever, any banker, it would have been actually good if we have any banker here. So for any banks to that somehow, when it comes to MSMEs, the trust factor is somewhere gets its question. And that is what probably we need to think that, that our default setting we should not lose. Because we also need to understand that, yes, there is an element of risk, but to what extent that risk is.
Right.
That is one. Second is on the skilling part, when we were talking about that, how do we, Dr. Vandana was mentioning about the ITI courses. So ITI kind of a system is like more generalized courses being taught to a group at large in general. But when you see that in terms of being specific to programs, so there are, in fact, within PMKVY also, there are actually provisions where very specific courses can also be designed, and that's specifically on industry needs. So those kind of things can also be done. Important question is that for MSMEs, it is all the more important that where you lie in the value chain. For example, Dheeraj is here, so since Dheeraj heads Vedanta, so Vedanta, if I look at Vedanta as an OEM, Vedanta must be having a number of MSMEs in the value chain. So Vedanta actually takes care a larger part of the skilling ecosystem when it comes to the MSMEs linked to Vedanta. Vis-a-vis, if I look at MSME, who is actually completely exposed to exports, a very niche firm who is completely exposed to the customers in Europe or in US,
Got it.
It becomes actually a challenge.
Perfect, thanks.
So that's the issue.
Thanks. Would you all like to respond? Vandana, do you want to start? Yeah.
So, Vijeta, in my book, there's an entire chapter called Freedom. And a large part of that, a significant chunk of that is about women who have found freedom through tech platforms. So, and there are various examples of that. Your beautician who comes through urban company is one of them. And there's a story about a woman who came to my house in Hyderabad, and she said, previously I would have to give, account for the amount of money I earned to my husband and say, I got this, and he would know everything. But now, because the money is transferred directly to my account, nobody knows what I'm doing with it, and I'm saving to build up a house. And this is true. So the book covers not just India, but all of South Asia. There are examples of this from Nepal, from Pakistan, how tech platforms have liberated women from, giving hisab to their house about how much they're spending and what they're doing, because it just comes into there's no cash payment. That is what, and there's an app called Karo, which was incubated in Microsoft Research, but is now an independent thing. Through that, what happens in that is that a woman or anybody just has to read out a passage from in the local language, and there is a market for this kind of voice data. Why? Because the big tech is trying to use voice data to, for search. For example, you find Uber drivers just reading out something. They'll say Anandiketan and something shop number 5. So voice is a huge deal in big tech is working towards it, and they need these inputs to develop that. And the people who are doing that, it's very fascinating, are a bunch of rural women who take that Karya app, and there are other apps. Karya is an example because I was working with them, and they just have to read out a passage and they get paid for it in their own language, in Bengali or wherever. So there are numerous examples of tech, liberating the women and giving them financial freedom. David, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I've said it in my initial remarks on the financing. I think again, a banking system, particularly dominated by public sector banks, is too conservative and old-fashioned. And what collateral do VC funds or private equity funds take from, startup? So I think that world is changing, and just to that gentleman's point of the default setting is distrust of MSMEs. I don't think so. The default setting is distrust of everybody. That's the part of the problem with our system, is that society doesn't trust entrepreneurs, government doesn't trust entrepreneurs don't trust government. I think there's that completely, everyone thinks that everyone else is out to do something wrong, like the government is out to ruin your business, or you're out to rob the government or banks of money. So I think the default, and then every system has bad eggs. It's not that the US or Europe or Japan grew without any bad eggs. But I think if the problem is if your default setting becomes that of distrust, and that, this guy is coming to me for a loan because he's going to run away or siphon off all the money. I think that is what is the problem in India. And I think that is where we are suffering. But then again, it is what it is. And I think, again, if MSMEs have the ability to grow, then they can tap other sources of funds. Equity markets have functioned much better in India than on the borrowing side. That's one option. If you grow in size, again, you said the big companies can anchor. Even in foreign supply chains. I mean, if you again part of a supply chain, there will be some firm over there, maybe an international firm, but it will anchor you if you are an important part of the supply chain. So I think the key thing is, but then again, we have problems with the way our trade policies are structured. It's not so easy to be integrated and so on. But I think again, we're going to have to fundamentally change our thinking on entrepreneurship. It is not about people. 99% of people are not out there to steal. They're actually there to build a genuine business. And I think they should be supported. So I think, but again, I think this current system is not built to support that kind of growth or that kind of scale in MSMEs that some of us expect. So I think, relying on government at the end of the day to give collateral, government can do a little bit. The government can do where they are, say, in women in particular, if there's a problem, if there's a genuine market problem there, or societal problem there, and government needs to intervene and help women who are otherwise not getting help. Yes, but I think if government tries to target too many things, what all will the government do? You have to make semiconductors, you've got to make the latest defense, you've got to make sure that we make solar cells in India, and then we have to make sure that the MSMEs come up. And government nowhere in the world can do so many things, at least not effectively. So I think we have to have greater trust in markets, greater trust in private, in financial institutions, in the way entrepreneurs are coming up. I think this country, unlike a lot of other parts of the world, is very rich in entrepreneurship. So I mean, that's one thing which is not lacking here. And if you go to parts of Africa, there is no tradition of entrepreneurship at all, or some other parts of the world. So why don't we leverage what we have?
Sounds good. Last word. Say, I will have a very small response to this, what you said. Collateral-free loan. And the idea that we're discussing, that there is the matter of distrust. So what is the meaning of the collateral? That if the person is going to steal, that I can sell that thing and can recover something. So when there is a distrust, it is a matter of collateral, and there is the SIO. So people will decide to get a loan. But वो किसी फिल्म में बोला था ना कि कुर्सी की पेटी बांध लीजिए, मौसम बदलने खराब होने वाला है. यहाँ पे मामला थोड़ा उल्टा है. Things are changing. The women, whether in SSGs and or other time, they are paying much better. The loans are not falling. So when loan will not fall in certain region, to certain gender, to certain amount, then this collateral free loans for those areas, I think they will continue. The whole structure that developed because of this trusted only materials. The system that will develop on the trust will trust people, their willingness. And when they will trust it, the matter of collateral will go on.
Thanks so much. I'll use my privilege as a moderator to wrap up now, because I think a lot of these conversations will actually continue outside this stage. Tomorrow we have in the morning a session green skilling. Tomorrow afternoon we have a session on MSMEs and who face climate risks. But I wanted to actually end on a positive note with two examples from your book of technology itself being used to level the playing field. Namma Yatri, from where I come from, Bangalore, is an auto rickshaw drivers app where the commission that goes to the middleman to the platform in this case is cut out, and the entire revenue goes to the auto driver. And another example from Rajasthan, this is not technology, but really a people's movement of the Rajasthan Gig Workers Act. So I think even when we talk about the low carbon transition, we need a technological change. We also need supporting complementary policies that may not have anything directly to do with that technological change, but need to be there in order to make sure that the benefits of that technological change are more widespread, they're more equitably distributed, and no one is left behind really in this kind of transition. So thank you very much to all of you. We'll take a group photograph and look forward to continuing. Thank you.